So, yeah, I was just thinking, I think we met back when I first worked at Electro Harmonics.
Absolutely. Going back.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't even want to say how long ago
Wow.
that was,
Oh my goodness.
but we're here mostly today to talk about future
Future
fret.
fret. Future fret.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I got something. I've since dumped Twitter. I've left Twitter, but
Right.
just before I did, I got some notice about a Future Fret Twitter thing. And
Yeah.
then Chris Buono, our friend Chris Buono, contacted me about it,
Hmm.
and it looks really exciting. So, do you want to talk about something
Well,
about how it
so
happened?
so Future Fret is it's funny. It's This is a thing that Chris Buono and I have kind of put together because we're both pedal geeks. We're and arcane and weird guitar noise type stuff fans and practitioners. And I was telling man, we were at a NAMM show, in fact, and we were like, it would be really cool if there was something oriented towards more, outre, adventurous, experimental approaches to guitar sound, playing, and all the rest of it. And that was kind of a while back. And eventually, what happened is that Chris said, "You know what? I found a guy who's got a thing going, and then we could actually maybe do this thing, right?" So I was all in, and I just started talking to people like Andre Chumley, he's currently out teching for Pat Metheny, and he
Oh,
was
wow.
Steve Howe's tech, and he's all in on this too. And we were talking about people who would who we have simpatico with that would just be great, and we came up with like Osnoy and Avi Bortnick, and actually David Torn, who's like one of the great gurus of I mean, he's the first one of the first people to describe. He's the first person to describe himself as an electronic guitarist, and so that's kind of the idea. And in pulling together, just a group of like-minded people to do an event, and this is Future Fret Episode 1, and the idea is that this is going to be the start of a thing that we're going to do yearly or semi-yearly. It's in development, but that's pretty much the idea. And we're taking that on. There's going to be a panel discussion. There are going to be some clinics. I think Oz is going to give a clinic, and Avi, and I think Chris. And Chris is a clinician, so I think
Right.
Chris is going to do one. And there's going to be a late night a jam with all the participating guitarists, and also Steve Jenkins, great Steve Jenkins is playing bass, and James Biscuit Rouse, who's a phenomenal drummer and and vocalist, and I've worked with him in different contexts. So they're all going to be. It's all going to be one no I don't know, crazy amalgam of mayhem.
Well, there
Um,
should be some good sounds emerging. I mean, as you can imagine, as soon as I heard about it, I was all in because I started, a web magazine devoted to exactly that same thing
yeah,
for which we're talking right now. And yeah, it seems like a great idea. I mean, you guys could be like the avant-garde G3 and maybe take it on the road at some point.
well, it's fun. It's funny because because we also want to engage in a conversation um, with manufacturers and people like that. Like one of the sponsors is Eventide, and Eventide has just been just evolving and doing all kinds of amazing things. In terms of gear, in terms of like the H9 is a revolutionary product. That it's like for that compact size, for the amount of things you can do with it, it's crazy town. And things like that. But also, I mean, this is we're doing this in the kind of, we hope, near the end of a pandemic or kind of in the middle. I mean, that's part of the thing that's happening with all endeavors right now is people are figuring out what can they do in the midst of this. And as people are kind of like, okay, we're getting out from behind the mask. We're managing our how we use our masks, and so people are starting to come together like that. But yeah, exactly. Like we're always on the hunt. There's a segment of the guitar playing public that, of course, are staunch traditionalists. They keep it simple. I get it. And there are those of us who are kind of like, what is that? We're more curious about weirdness. We're weirdos, whatever. We're more curious about different approaches and things like that. So,
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've noticed it, but I mean, I haven't, I had no choice but to notice, I started Guitar Moderne, it's going back 10 years now.
mm-hmm.
And it kind of chugged along for years. Maybe it worked up to about 1,000 people would log on, spend some time on there a month. And but I just watched it climb and climb. I mean, and just in recent, since I started doing the videos, posting videos, it's like quadrupled. And I'm finding, there it's still not heavy metal. It's still not traditional guitar, of which
Mm-hmm.
that crowd is huge, but it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's worldwide, and there's so many young, especially among young players, there seems to be so many that are coming up that don't want to do the same old thing,
Yeah,
and that's why companies like Eventide and Red Panda, which I know you use some of their stuff, and
absolutely wonderful stuff. Yeah,
yeah, and Earthquaker, they
yeah,
make stuff that's off the beaten path because, I mean,
exactly.
and they're successful because there's enough guitar players worldwide who want to make some new sounds. Have you been running into that
Well, it
attitude
Well,
lately?
absolutely. Well, the thing is, the niche markets, actually, if you think about them as worldwide, they can be quite significant. Like, it's not unlike the fact that the vinyl record should be extinct, but it's not. In fact, the vinyl record has just had a life. And increasingly, I think the vinyl record is going to become a talismanic object, because if you want to make music and not be tracked, pull out a record. You know what I mean? And there's a response to the thing always being or everything that we do is being watched, and then we're being marketed to. And there's an intimacy to the record and the tactile reality of the record, that you have to get up and turn the record over, and this has exerted a fascination to people who, I mean, this was music from a long time ago, or that process is, they didn't grow up with that process. They grew up with like files. So there's something fascinating about the mechanical nature of a record and its processes for younger fans and audiences. And there's something special about it. There's something tactile and special about it. It's the same thing with modular. Like modular, the Euro rack scenario, it's fascinating because it makes no economic sense. Like, the modules were like, what, how does something, a market that's not a commercial market, I mean, outside of soundtracks, you know what I mean, or I mean, it's not pop music. It's not like, your R&B Rhodes, your R&B DX7 derived Rhodes sound. It's not that. It's like you have to patch things together and plug into these modules, and I'm like, how does this make sense? How is this even functioning in a world of immediate convenience, because it's fascinating, people get hooked into it, it's not what everybody else is doing, and it's become its own little universe. The same thing is happening with all the various platforms, with all, and also YouTube is fed into this thing where people are fascinated with things. Like, it's all over the map right now, and that's kind of, there's a segment of the playing public that the FutureFret idea is kind of already ongoing. People are looking into corners for, what's that weird thing? What does that fuzz box do? What's up with that PLL thing? What's up with this synth pedal? What's up with all the various, it's weird, but a company like Chase Bliss has, I mean, they're incredibly successful for making pedals that are not obvious in their implementation, but people dig. I stroke my guitar, and this other amazing, magical, bizarre, mathematical thing happens, And there's an aspect of that which is, I mean, people are looking for little bits of magic to take them out of the everyday. And that's what I think is happening with every on the digital side and the analog side. Even though the approaches are different, the thing is, oh man, this delay does a thing with the feedback that's totally cool. Or this tremolo has got this thing, you know what I mean? And that's the appeal of it. And whether or not it's even practical, and of course, you know, effects have, effects like the tremolo on Johnny Marr's guitar and How Soon It Is Now, right? Like the fact that that sound, is such a part of that song. You know what I'm saying? Or just the sound at the beginning of Black Hole Sun from Soundgarden. That sound was also tied to the song. And I think in terms of people's creativity, the idea that the sound will also inspire how the song will happen is also part of the fascination of the whole thing.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, that's always been a thing in terms of that's what sold gear was, when a song, I mean, that's what sold fuzz tones was when Satisfaction came out. That's how fuzz tones started. And the other fascinating, you're saying, the analog side and digital side, it's also fascinating how, a lot of the avant-garde players that I'm familiar with, guitar players that are putting out music, but, not all of them, but many of them are putting out vinyl. So
Absolutely.
you're spreading in both directions, and I think you hit on it when you said the tactile thing. That's something people, they sit at their desks all day in front of computers, usually for whatever else they're doing and for everything else they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and they're fascinated by something where they can actually touch something and see a result happen, and it's finite, and it's, the modular thing. I was amazed. I'm sure you saw it too because you go to NAM, or we're going to NAM every year.
Mm-hmm.
It went from a tiny corner of one
Abs-
one floor to like this huge area of a main hall. And I think part of the appeal of that is that you don't have to be a musician really to get into it. It's for
right.
a lot of people, it's a way, they got some extra money, they can buy a module and get some sounds and go, wow, this is.
Well, it's also kind of, think of it like this. It's actually puzzle pieces. I mean, you could think of it as audio puzzle making. And that's the thing with the mods. Like, if I plug this into that, what's going to happen? Well, what happens if I plug, that into this thing? You know what I mean? And that's part of the appeal of it. That's part of the appeal of it. And it's also like those people that could deal with the tedium. See, this is the okay. So this is the thing. Part of what's shifted everything is the idea of convenience. So it's just kind of like you don't have to do this, that, and the third. This will just do the thing for you. It's convenient. But there's, of course, a movement away from convenience towards the tactile, towards towards away from fast food to slow food, and the way, like cooking at home, and all of these things are interrelated. Putting this together with that, or the idea that different combinations of pedals are going to give you different sounds. It's like on one hand, there's the idea of, okay, this effect is going to do everything, and some people go with that. But then, like, yeah, this has a chorus thing, but this particular chorus is shelved a certain way, and its rate does a certain thing, or it's a little bit random, and I dig it. And that's the funny conundrum, because on the one hand, there's the thing that's popular, so everybody buys that thing. But then there's the need to be an individual, particularly for Americans, right? So, it's like, I want to do the thing that nobody else is doing. So you have the vintage market of the rare thing. You have boutique people doing something like, this is, like, we did this thing and it's completely bizarre. You have the companies like the Line Sixes, which are also like going, well, you know what? Our thing is cool, but you can use this to control other modeling systems, right? So all of these different conversations are happening at the same time, and it's kind of like we're in I don't want to say a golden age, but we're bombarded with a lot of media, and it's a fascinating thing to it's a fascinating way to it's a journey to kind of figure out who you are in your sonic, putting together the bits that are going to be your sonic signature. And it can be a combination of the boutique, the electronic, the manufactured, something for like a pedal from Indonesia, like the synesthesia. You know what I mean? From far flung places. It could be somebody making a fuzz box in your hometown, and the idea that it's like going to Amazon and there's the $100 guitar that's actually not bad. So all of these things are combining. And part of the thing is with Future Fret is to is for people to have a conversation about that. How do we feel about what do we feel about having too much gear? What do we feel about what do we like? That's part of what I want to see happen with the Future Fret thing is to think about where do people really want to go? Not in fact defining, not giving the idea that it's all going to be utopic. One of the funny things that's happening is that sales of guitars have gone up. People were talking about the guitar was on the way out before the pandemic. Like people were kind of saying, "Oh, guitar sales are da da da," and then what's the place of the guitar in popular music and all like that. And suddenly that conversation is kind of flipped now because the guitar is being recognized as an essential thing, and guitar sales have gone through the roof. And then you'll find like an artist like her, the R&B singer. Turns out she's a kick-ass guitarist. Like check out if you haven't seen it, check out her. That's a
Yeah,
you
I've
know
heard of her.
her right.
Yeah.
Check out her Saturday Night Live performance from a few months ago. Say you think you know what you get, I mean, and then she pulls out a guitar and she's like, wow, she's kind of fresh. And that's the thing that's so interesting about the life of the guitar. It's showing up in unexpected places and unexpected areas.
So what are the plans for future Fred between shows? Like if you end up just getting together to play live once a year, how are you
Well,
going to
well
keep
we're
it
gonna
out there in between?
well we're gonna have to figure that out. I think I talked to Chris about is it a podcast? Is it a YouTube channel? Is it a bunch of a changing cast of characters that come in and out? Is interviews with different pedal makers? You know, we're figuring out like okay, so we would like for this to be a yearly event. We have to plan this time. I mean, when we talked about doing this, it was kind of our timeline was pretty short. So thinking about next year, oh, then there's a raft of things, and it's those are all the options we have to discuss. Like, okay, is that going to be? Are we going to be another YouTube channel like Knobs, or is it going to be podcasts? Interviewing people like Alex Skolnick, what have you, or you know what I mean? Talking to some young and up and coming people like Malcolm Brickhouse, as well as veterans. We have to determine what. Also speaking to the builders and the makers, it would be great. I would love to have an interview with Joe Court, from Chase Bliss. It would be wonderful because they're also this is not just about stuff. Everything has a story. Everything has all of these things have real stories. Like the fact there was Chase Bliss. I didn't know that he had a brother named Chase.
Yeah, yeah, I heard
And
that.
it's
I heard the story
you
recently.
know what I mean? And that changes that makes it a human story. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of thing that that's the kind of area I would like for Future Fred. Not just futurism, but also where is it in our lives in the here and now? What do we hope to have happen? Also, I actually want us to span from the virtuosic, but to also, the person that's just trying to make a noise that's interesting, because I want to see people not get chased away from the guitar and say, well, I'm not good enough and I'm not, and I can't shred or whatever. No, 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 no. And I want it to be an area where people that are crazy town shredding, whatever, but also people that just want to make a sound and just do something cool. That I think that it has to, in order for the guitar to have a healthy life going forward, it has to include the the fascinated amateur and the dedicated virtuoso. There has to be room to include all of that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I mean, they're out there because it's not just professionals that are keeping, 200 boutique pedal companies in business. It's a lot of these dedicated amateurs, and especially with some of the more expensive pedals, it's the same thing with guitar. A lot of what has kept guitar going is, I think, boomers who maybe played music when they were younger, but became doctors and lawyers, and
Mm-hmm.
could buy expensive boutique instruments, and keep buying stuff. It's like the stuff we used to have this
Mm-hmm.
discussion at the guitar magazines in terms of the demographics. And it's like, when they want to appeal to a younger demographic, that's great, and you should. But for the advertisers, the people buying, the younger kids don't have the money that older people do. So in terms of the advertising, we would mention and discuss that, you know, you might want articles that appeal to the older people too, because they're the
Absolutely.
ones that are buying the stuff. But yeah, absolutely. And there's so many areas. I mean, just amongst the people that are doing the Future Fred show, I mean, if you guys did a podcast and or YouTube channel, I mean, the wealth of wisdom amongst the four of you, is it four? What, Oz, you, Chris? No, I mean, five of you,
Yeah.
um, could keep the channel going for a couple of years easily, just imparting your knowledge and your thoughts about the instrument and how to use it and where it's going and the devices and technology. Just before I let you go, I did want to ask you a little bit about technology because you are the guy. I mean, I just rewatched your rig rundown from 2016, and
That nuttiness.
yeah, and I went back and watched some earlier stuff like you would. I mean, really, you must have been really young with Shannon Jackson and
Oh yeah, sure.
playing a Les Paul. At that point, you're probably plugging practically straight into the amp. And
Well, I had a couple. I had my Distortion Plus, and I had my oh my goodness, what was I using back then? I had my Electric Mistress. The Electric Mistress was freaky. Thing about electro harmonics is really like the you could argue the first boutique pedal company because they made things like the frequency analyzer, which were completely impractical because it's but it made this awesome weird noise. You know what I mean? I still have my frequency analyzer around here somewhere, or something like the tube zipper. It's like it's a total, it's a. But the thing is, um, I think that was my first thing, and then when the Rat came out and all that stuff. But I was into stuff then. I just didn't,
I think it's safe to say you've expanded a bit since then. And
yeah,
just
well,
for the, I mean, just for the record, from my interest, from what I've been watching, there was a point. Where was it? You were using, and when you're playing Mask in Warsaw,
oh yeah,
that concert, you're using a laptop, and I was curious what you were using it for then.
yeah.
And
I was probably using a guitar rig, Native Instruments guitar rig. I was probably using it to switch between Native Instruments guitar rig and IK Multimedia's Amplitube. Because I have this whole kind of, I think in my rig run that I talked about parallel processing, because I had these kind of passive resistance mixers,
yeah,
which were also signal splitters, right? So DoD, aka Digitech, made a 4-channel one, and there was a guy on Etsy named Michael Ricci who made an 8-channel one, and I have a few of his 8-channel ones, and basically I'm able to split the guitar signal into 4 or 8 outputs, and they could feed sort of the audio interface going into a laptop or going into an iPad. Then I could send it, into one of these, like something like a GR300, which is an audio guitar synth that doesn't use the hex
right.
pickup, like that. So there was a multiplicity of places I could send it. You know what I mean? And yeah, something like that.
Well, I'd love. I we have to do a deep dive into your gear over the years and stuff like that at some
Oh
point.
yeah,
What's your time situation today? Because I'm being told that I only have 8 minutes left. They didn't used to have a limit on two people,
right.
but
Yeah.
apparently that's started. So
w-
we can either, stop and start again, or we can do that on another day, depending on your.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's a separate. I think it's almost like because I really wanted to talk about Future Fret, the event. Also, I also want to give a shout out to Ed Mayer who really put the thing together for elm3.com. And he really put together the thing that's gonna go down in Asbury Park. And he's really a big part of how this is actually happening. So I want to give a shout out to him.
Great. Well, let's call it here, and so I can get this edited up because it's happening this weekend,
Yeah,
and I'll get this edited up, and we'll figure out a time down in the
soon.
future.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it soon because it's good to see you again.
You too. It's always
You know
great
what
to
I mean,
catch
Michael?
up.
And it's a fascinating. It's a fascinating. It's still an interesting thing. What's going on with guitar and the noises that it can make.
Absolutely. Well, till then, you stay safe and healthy, and
Absolutely.
we'll talk soon.
We'll talk. Thanks so much, Michael. This is great. Thanks a
All
lot.
right. Take care, Vernon.
Take care now. Bye bye.